You will be our very first panelist to discuss KNBA. So if you have a presentation that you'd like to start, go right ahead.
Okay. Let's see. Give me a minute. So if I share my screen.
Should be able to share your screen. Spencer, do you need me to change any of the settings?
No, we have the spotlight set and everything. Just as soon as the presentation is ready, it should pop right up.
Okay. Is it not pulling up for you, Jacqueline?
Yeah, it's not pulling up. Let's see.
Okay. How about we you work on that, and then we will go to Kyle if he's ready to go, because we don't have Jeff. Kyle, are you available and ready?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't create a PowerPoint or anything like that. I just kind of had a written report here.
Perfect.
So as far as upcoming events, our fund drive starts next week, and anecdotally, it seems like a lot of our listeners have expressed that they're familiar with what's going on. A lot of them plan to give more and want to support us, so that's good to hear. And we've already seen that during our quiet drive.
And Kyle, remind us where you're.
Oh, sorry, KH&S and Haynes.
Thank you.
Or Skagway as well. Yeah, Skagway, Cluckwan, and Haynes. So, and as we go into the drive, we've been talking a lot about how to sort of balance. We don't want to cry wolf and say funding's going away, but we want to like highlight the uncertainty and concerns and real impacts that the next generation warning system stop work notices have had on us. But also just try to generate excitement and positive feelings about the station, and sort of balancing that line, and knowing that the Senate could even vote like the week of our drive, which starts the 7th. I'm not sure, when they're going to vote, but could possibly be then. So yeah, just kind of focusing on the real impacts and the uncertainty there, as we organize our fund drive. Current happenings, we've signed a legal declaration with an attorney who was representing the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They were trying to find out how the stop work notices for anyone who received that grants have impacted their stations, and we have a bunch of equipment that we've purchased that we've not been reimbursed for, that is sort of just sitting in boxes, and we likely won't meet our the window to hire contractors and stuff to get the equipment set up for our project. So we might not even complete it this year, and we're really hesitant to continue purchasing equipment. So I know the CPB is working to file a lawsuit to try to make sure they keep their portal open, which is how we file for reimbursements. And a lot of stations are probably familiar with what's going on there. Other than that, if anyone hasn't heard of the Institute for Nonprofit News and their News Match program, I thought I'd bring that up. We were just notified that we were awarded or a second participation in what they call News Match, and it generated $22,000 for our station last year during our December news drive. I just wanted to throw that out there for anyone who, if they haven't heard of this, it's a quite a good program. And if anyone has questions about it, I can go into more detail about that, but I won't take up too much time now. Yeah, that's all I have for a presentation. If there's anything else anybody wants to know about, feel free to ask. And yeah.
Kyle, do you know what percentage of your funding comes from CPB?
37%.
37%.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah. Our board has met and we've tried to sort of come up with short and long-term plans in the event that funding is rescinded. And yeah, it's a huge hit though, obviously.
Yeah. All right. Kyle, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And really quick for the attendees that we have, if you have a question to ask, we will be doing that at the end of the presentations. So we can do that either through the chat, if you can type a message in there, or through the Q&A tab. So either way, drop your questions in there, and if it's for a specific station, we'll call on them. Otherwise, it'll just be whoever feels like speaking up. So if Jacqueline, you're ready, we can go back to you. Otherwise, we'll work on down the list.
Yes, I did get it to work. Let me see if I
Let me
can
spotlight you here.
share my screen.
There we go.
Can you see my screen? How do I
Yes.
do it presentation mode? Which one?
So if you do the little, should be this button right there. No, the next one. Or
Oh,
this
okay.
little screen. Okay.
Okay. All right. So thank you. Having a little technical difficulty, but I'm really happy to be here today for our roundtable with the public radio managers and about Kiwanis. I'm Jacqueline Salee, the president and CEO. I was born and raised here in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm Inupiaq. My family is from Nome, Alaska, and still have a lot of relatives that live in the area. So Kiwanis is a Athabascan word that means live air. We're a native governed media nonprofit. Our mission is to bring Native voices to Alaska and the nation. You can see all of the programs that we produce, including National Native News, Native America Calling, and Digify, The River, KMBA 90.3, a new program called Our Living Lands. And we distribute all of these programs on our Native Voice One network. And I want to thank all of you that are affiliates of Native Voice One. All of these red dots here represent stations that carry one or more of our programs. You can see all of them in Alaska and then nationwide as well. We serve all of the tribal radio stations in the lower 48. And there are about 60 native stations throughout the country. We serve, of course, many more stations in urban and rural areas. Some highlights from 2025. We did election coverage at the Democratic and Republican conventions. We also did an inauguration coverage, and these both had video capabilities where listeners and our audience members could tune in and watch this. We also have a strong youth and sports coverage. This year we were at the Native Youth Olympics here in Anchorage, and that was a wonderful event. And We also have a strong program with internships to see more Alaska Natives getting into our industry. We have a close partnership with First Alaskans Institute, and we currently have an intern who is going to the University of Alaska majoring in music, and she is originally from Little Diomede, and she's currently cataloging our Indigenous music. This year, we also were one of the top 10 awardees for the Crystal Radio Award in 2025. So we're really proud of our station and the coverage that we provide. I also want to mention that thanks to Ed Allman and the Alaska Public Media, we're part of the Alaska desk, and we have Alona, who is here at KMBA, and she's doing a wonderful job of reporting for KMBA, but many of her stories are also then aired on National Native News. I was asked to talk about the CPB funding rescission that I know we're all worried about. And this is already kind of old, but the White House had proposed rescinding $1.1 billion in previously approved funding in FY26 and 27. And CPB funds represent 24 to 70% of local station budgets in Alaska, including KMBA. KMBA receives a CSG, and our national shows are impacted as well. We do have our 2025 through 2027 CPB contract in place for National Native News and Native America Calling. And Native Voice One we have our CPB contract that goes through 2026. We can see if we are going to, if CPB funds are rescinded, it'll be a big impact to Kawanik, in particular KMBA and National Native News, Native America Calling, NV1. So we've been steering our audience members to protect my public media and have been doing a social media campaign and also doing news reports and Native America Calling shows about that. So we had a board meeting last week, and we'll be going through budget scenarios of the worst case scenario of zero CPB funding. I'm sure you all know that the Senate did pass the quote, big beautiful bill, and it's going on to the House, and the president wants to sign it by Friday. And so what we've done is met with our congressional delegation, and we've also done outreach to key Alaska Native and statewide organizations, including the Alaska Federation of Natives, who is very supportive of public media. And we also got a resolution passed at the National Congress of American Indians, a emergency resolution urging Congress to reject proposals to rescind or eliminate funding from CPB. And as I mentioned already, we did a social media campaign to urge members, our listeners, to be engaged and understand what the impacts to CPB funding cuts. We also let our listeners know through an email campaign of about 9,000 listeners who receive our newsletters. Some of the coverage that we did on Native America Calling, you can see a few programs there that we did. I was on Native America Calling about the potential cuts and the cuts to our Native stations. National Native News has also covered these potential cuts, and Senator Murkowski did shout out to during National Native News that the more than 60 tribal stations served out of KNBA would be disproportionately impacted where we offer emergency alerts and vital community connections. So that's what we've done, and we are urging people again to go to the Protect My Public Media website, which is a good way to be in contact and learn what's being done with the CPB funding. So that is the update that I have. And glad you're doing this, Gretchen.
Great. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. All right, Spencer, who's up next?
Next up, I believe we have Kyle Clayton from KHNS in Haynes.
He was first, so we have.
Oh, he was first. My mistake. In that case, it would be Jeff Seifert in Utqiagvik.
And it doesn't look like he's here, so it looks like.
All right. So next then would be Tom Abbott with KFSK in Petersburg.
Great, thanks, Gretchen, and hello, everybody. Similar to everybody else, I'll just kind of cut to more of the stats for us. It's 30% of the KFSK budget. Interestingly enough, as Kyle was saying, perhaps increased revenue is coming through membership. It certainly was the case, is the case here, but we've seen that trend ever since the governor has been vetoing out the state funding for 6 years. There's no way that we can make up the loss of CPB funding through any local giving. We're already equaling the exact same amount. Oddly enough, we raised 170,000 in membership locally, and that's exactly the amount of money we are set to lose here if the CPB funding goes away. There is no way that we can increase and offset that money locally. We're just way too small of a market. I think we all are too small of markets to be able to offset it in local giving. Of course, I think that if the rescission were to go through, it would result in the need to cut personnel. If we were to cut personnel, I think we're in a downward spiral, reducing our local service, which then would reduce the giving going forward. It would reduce underwriting. I think the only path forward would be in a more vigorous collaboration, and that is getting a signal from somebody else altogether. And because otherwise, I think if we go cutting of personnel, we're going to end up cutting the personnel that need to raise the money, and we're going to cut the personnel that provides the service that people give for. So I think it's a downward spiral, and I think we all face it. And I think the reality of it is that we'd have to pull the Band-Aid off and just say, look, we can't sustain this service going forward. So we're gonna have to do something dramatically different. So our board, we've already been discussing it. We haven't scheduled anything yet, of course, until after the 18th. But we will hold a series of town hall meetings and have a discussion, be extremely straightforward and transparent and honest with what the situation is. And I think it would be, I think for many, they're gonna understand and saw it coming. For many, they're gonna be shocked and go, really? I didn't think it would be this bad. But I think that's what we're gonna be facing here in a short order. I don't think it can be made up in foundation giving or any, again, that's gonna take personnel. And I think we're gonna need to finally just say, you know, we've been living on shoestring budget for so long. This is the final straw. And I think we'll have to dramatically change the service that we provide here, and we're going to be far less local. And therefore, I think the revenue will continue to go down because you won't have any state funding. There's no more federal funding. The local funding starts to go down. It's not a pretty picture, as we all know. And we're going to have a really honest, hard discussion in our community, because just like most of the rest of you, we are a community-owned radio station. The community owns this license. So as the caregivers of the license, we have to let the community know exactly the situation that they face. And that's all I've got to say on it. I did have a discussion with, it's been going on with, well, anyway, we've been having a lot of discussions, and we've done a really strong advocacy work here, and have gotten a lot of comments back from people that have advocated on our behalf to our representatives in DC. And they've been, I think, pretty spot on, that I think we've only got one vote that's possibly going to stick with us. So that's all I've got to say. And if anybody's got any questions or anything.
Great, Tom. Thank you very much for that. And thanks for your continued advocacy. All right, Spencer, who's up next?
Next is Ed Ullman from Alaska Public Media in Anchorage.
Thank you, Spencer. And Gretchen, thank you so much for pulling this together. I really appreciate it. I do want to acknowledge the folks that have been working on advocacy going back to DC. Gretchen has been there, Justin, Jacqueline, Molly, of course, over the years. Kristen joined us recently for the NPR fly-in. Hopefully I'm not missing anybody. I think Tom's been there in the past. And I do want to acknowledge Tom is an Alaska Public Media board member and an important advisor for us, and serves in a role that we've always had on our board of directors. At least one professional director of radio and television across the state is on our board of directors, and he's also on our editorial board. Many of you know that Alaska Public Media organizes what used to be called the Alaska Public Radio Network. Now we just call it Statewide News for branding purposes. And all of our radio stations carry a lot of the content that we aggregate here in Anchorage and distribute through the whole system. Now, we don't create all of that content because there's reporters, for those of you, and by the way, I should thank everybody who's tuning in today to listen to what we have to share, and how vital it is that you reach out to our senators, and by phone now, especially Senator Sullivan. But as I spoke to Lisa Murkowski a couple of Saturdays ago at our local market where her sons sell pasta that my family and I really enjoy, Lisa gave me 20 minutes and said, keep sending the stuff to me too. And she again thanked all of us as part of the delegation, especially Molly, who puts together an excellent piece about all of what radio stations are doing all across Alaska. It's so vital, and her support is tremendous. But I really do appreciate Tom's candor. This is a seminal moment in public media, not just here in Alaska, but across the country. Alaska Public Media has been involved with a small team in what we call break glass scenarios, just like you've heard from Jacqueline, Tom, and Kyle. We'll be getting together with our board of directors after the vote that's projected to occur before July 18th. And some of you might also know or been aware that I was asked to represent public media stations across the country when the DOGE subcommittee conducted a hearing that they titled Anti-American Airwaves, Holding the Heads of NPR and PBS Accountable. This is an attack. They're calling us anti-American. I know that you disagree with that because you're on this call today. There's nothing more American than public television and public radio. We're here representing our communities. And I just want to share that 20% of Alaska Public Media's funding comes from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. And while that's a smaller amount than for a lot of our colleagues across the state, this is a devastating amount because it means we're not going to be able to, in Anchorage, suddenly figure out a way to help everybody else across the state. To Tom's point, it's going to be painful, and it's going to mean reduction in staff, which always leads to reduction in services. And we know that the first most important piece of this that resonates with Sullivan in his office is this notion of free universal access to essential services and public safety. He cares deeply about that. And I do want to share with you one piece of that that drives home the point. And let me pull this up really quick and then share a map with you that demonstrates the Alaska Rural Communications System. And I want to go full screen with that. So let's see, can I do that? There we go. The state provides Alaska Public Media $77,000 to oversee 100 aging Alaska Rural Communications Service receivers. And these receive television signals and radio signals. But more importantly, there's a satellite system that is also part of what we call our interconnection system for all of our content here in Alaska. Now, we have redundancy built into that with IT and yeah, we can still move content around over IP and digital means, but you know what happens when fiber goes out. You know what happens in rural Alaska when the internet is not working the way it's expected to work. This system, the ARCS Rural Communication Service, for which Alaska Public Media operates it at $77,000 a year, which ensures that another 100 communities, in addition to the 26 or 25 that receive their local public media and public radio stations, is at risk as well. This is big. And it's all about public safety. And I'll let others speak to that. They'll probably be a little bit more eloquent, but I think that that's an important piece. In December, I was there in DC in Senator Sullivan's office with the majority of his staff, shared this map on a big old thing and handed it out to everybody there. They're aware of this. Remind him when you call that this is essential. Our 27 public media outlets all across the state and the 100 Alaska Rural Communication Systems, they're all at risk. Thank you for your time. Happy to take questions.
Thanks, Ed. All right, Spencer, who's up next?
Next up, we have Lauren Adams with KUCB in Unalaska.
Yes, and I should be unmuted, so I will launch right into it. I am Lauren Adams, and I'm lucky enough to have grown up in the Aleutian Islands, moved here when I was very young, and I moved back by accident when I was visiting my parents after college, and I have not looked back, and I've been working at KUCB ever since. I've been a station manager since 2008, and the organization that I work for, our full name is Unalaska Community Broadcasting. We just turned 50 and we got our start as a branch of the local school district, but we became an independent nonprofit in 1984, but we started in 1974. So we spent all of 2024 celebrating our history. We had a new podcast, which isn't done yet, but I'm about 5 episodes in, about station history. And we also had an exhibit here in Alaska at the Museum of the Aleutians. We have a low power TV station and a full power FM station. And we are located in a hub community of the Aleutian Islands, and we also meet our audience online and social media. We're also a Coast Alaska station, which means most of our back office operations are shared with a handful of stations in Southeast Alaska, which allows our staff to focus on local programming. And we're a proud member of the Alaska Desk with Alaska Public Media. Theo Greenlee is our reporter with Alaska Public Media, and he's just doing great work. If you have not seen it, he just did a really fun story about a softball tournament in Anchorage that was a St. Paul, a Pribilof Island tradition. So if you want to sample, it's cool community reporting that we wouldn't be able to do without this network. We're the only newsroom located in the Aleutian Islands, and we're award-winning, including this year, our regional Edward R. Murrow Award. We're a small market with big reach. We're the top fishing port in the United States and an essential international shipping hub. We also do arts and culture programming, including this week. You can tune into our Facebook page for a live stream of a commentated on Alaska 4th of July parade. So that's some of the fun work we do. We're also located on a volcanic island in the Bering Sea, which means we have to be an integral partner in emergency alert procedures. And that includes tsunami warnings, extreme weather, breaking news events, road closures, and these are very real parts of our daily operations. So in addition to the local services we provide, we also own and operate a translator, and we run 24-hour KSKA service. So we have a secondary NPR feed for community members to get local news because we don't have any other access to broadcast communications in Alaska. In the coming year, we are launching our video archives in an online format, and we were hoping to complete our next generation warning system grant, which is supposed to provide our station with power backup, and we have not yet been able to move forward with that. In addition to that big chunk of federal funding, we also receive 41% of our total station budget from CPB, and very similar to what Tom said, I won't repeat him, just it's that crucial here as well. Potential funding loss would be catastrophic for KUCB, which would mean a loss of service and staff.
Lauren, thank you so much.
All right. Next up, we have appears to be, so we're unfortunately KCAW couldn't make it today. So we have Kristen Hall from KYUK in Bethel.
Hi, I'm Kristen Hall, Interim General Manager at KYUK in Bethel. It's hard to believe that we're at the end of another fiscal year. It marks the 53rd year we are broadcasting on radio here in Bethel and the 52nd year on television. KYUK is the oldest native-owned radio station, owned and operated radio station in the country. It is a legacy we're very proud of, and one that we hope we can continue. We started off the year being able to add a 4th member to our news team thanks to a partnership with ProPublica. It's an investigative reporter that has been focusing on the relocation of Newtok to Muktivik, which is a devastating situation that I'm so happy that as the local broadcaster, we are able to dedicate resources toward. We were just able to extend that partnership for an additional quarter. So I'm very glad that this issue is receiving additional coverage from our local station here in Bethel. In addition to the investigative work that we've done in Newtok, we were able to dedicate staff to travel to Newtok over the year to work with their local youth. So we were not only able to work with the community members and the tribes, but we launched what was a pen pal exchange between high school students in Newtok and high school students in Provincetown, Massachusetts. all the way across the country. These high school students are both, these high school students are all at the front lines of climate change and growing up in those conditions. So they started a simple pen pal exchange, documenting their experiences with photographs and stories. You can see their work in our student section on our website. We just welcomed 8 of those New Talk students back to the region because their photographs were actually invited to a photo festival called Photoville in New York. So we sent 2 of our staff members and 8 high school students from New Talk on that trip in New York, which was just a fantastic experience. We are so proud of the thought and professionalism that these kids brought to their work. I encourage you to check it out. It's incredible insights from local people about the relocation project. Working with students is really at the heart of who we are at KYUK. Not many people know, but some of our first switchers and TV crew members were volunteer high school and college students. It's really been a part of our history since day one, working with youth. Not only do we work with high school students, we also work with elementary students. You can check out our animated series, Yupik Word of the Week, which is also on radio. It is entirely made by elementary school students, animations and all. We sent a bilingual team to create our most recent installment that you can catch next year. It is all words about things that we wear. We worked with kindergartners and 6th graders to create that series. It's truly impressive. We cannot stress the impact that the loss of federal funding would have in our ability to work with local youth and continue to grow local media makers right here in the YK Delta. We really hope that we can continue doing this important work. One of the accolades that we received this year that I think I'm personally most heartened by and really excited about. We received a 2025 Contributions to Literacy in Alaska Award from the Alaska Center for the Book. We just found out last week. So not only have we been recognized this year for our journalism, but we are recognized for our stewardship and our commitment to Yupik literacy, which is humbling. The work that we do, to be recognized for that work is, we're very grateful. In addition to our Yupik literacy programming, we also own and maintain the largest Yupik and Chupik audio visual collection in the world. So we have spent years digitizing that collection, and I think part of this award that we were given this year is due to our archive preservation efforts. You can go to archive.kyuk.org, and we utilized part of our archive, our Waves of Wisdom series, which interviewed local elders in the 90s. We kind of repurposed that material, and we worked with local bilingual coders so that you can not only watch this series, learn from our elders, but you can also read along a Yupik transcript of every video from that series. When you hover over the Yupik word, you get the English translation. It's an incredible learning tool that celebrates the Yupik language that we are so very proud of. These really unique projects that are so specific to who we are here in the YK Delta are only possible because of our support that we get from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Here in Bethel at KYUK, that funding makes up nearly 70% of our operations funds. The projects that we focus on and we work with our community members to make happen will not continue if we are to lose this funding. I'd like to thank all of the attendees today for taking the time to have this conversation with us, really have a good understanding of where we all stand. I appreciate your advocacy efforts as we all go through this together. I have been interim general manager here at the station since February, so it's been an incredibly unique introduction to this role for the station for me. But I think one of the most encouraging parts of this journey has been the incredible team that we have supporting us across the state, and I'm really glad to be a part of it. Thank you and kudos to all of my fellow general managers for the meaningful and mission-driven work that you do to know your communities and serve your communities with the unique needs and nuances that we all have. I know the projects that we do here at KYUK, the things that we focus on, those needs aren't going to be the same as the needs in the Matsu Valley or Bristol Bay, but it's our job to listen to our community members and know the difference. And I really commend all of my colleagues for doing that very important work. I hope that we all can continue to do so for many years to come. Thank you.
Kristen, thank you so much. I will go next, and I hate going after Kristen because she is so incredibly passionate and so well spoken that it's very difficult. You're hard to follow, Kristen. I do have a quick presentation that I'll share, and here we go. Hopefully that's not it.
Looks like you just need to click the slideshow button in the corner.
Okay.
But
There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So here's KUAC. And so KUAC signed on October 1st and in 1962. So we've been broadcasting for 63 years in Alaska. And that was 3 years after statehood. We're licensed to the University of Alaska, and we were the first FM radio station in Fairbanks. We were one of the original group of 65 stations to qualify for CPB funding in 1969 and a charter member of NPR in 1970. And we were the only public radio station in Alaska for 10 years. Then for TV, we signed on in December of 1971. We were the first public television station in Alaska, also licensed to the University of Alaska. We originally broadcast from 5 to 10 p.m. each night. And way back in 1983, we were the #1 PBS station in the nation. And we were also the first public station to go digital in Alaska. We're super excited about being able to continue our purpose, and that is to improve lives through broadcasting. So today, at the last assessment, we were deemed the most listened to station in interior Alaska. We have translators from the Bering Sea to the Canadian border, so Nome, Tok, Eagle, Healy, Nenana, Delta, and Bettles. We offer 6 channels of programming for television. So PBS kind of flagship, World, Create, FNX, which is First Nations Experience, that folks in the bush and tribal communities, if they're on the ARC system, they can receive that. PBS Kids and 360 North, thankfully, from our colleagues at KTOO who provide legislative coverage. More than 214 hours per week of children's educational programming, and our television translators are in Delta, Healy, and Nenana. We've been busy also creating lots of locally produced content. A longtime series of Alaska Live that's hosted by our very own Lori Neufeld started out as a radio-only program, and now it's on radio and television. We partner with the Fairbanks Daily News Miner to put out a sportscast, and that was in response to some comments that we received from the community, especially after the only other newsroom outside of KUAC and the Fairbanks Daily News Miner went dark because we no longer have television broadcast news coming out of Fairbanks. We also offer locally produced content that is produced way out in the community, and we bring it to our listeners' ears. And that's from Mark Ross with Creamer Sounds and Sights, the University of the Museum of the North, University Museum of the North, More You Look, the Earthquake Centers, which Shaken Alaska, AVO Radio, which is the volcano observatory radio, Polar Politics, Beyond the Weather with Rick Toman, Energy in the North from the Alaska Center for Energy and Power. And then locally, we're producing Black History Notes, Women's History Notes, and Indigenous Storytelling. And exciting news, we are entering into a partnership with the Doyon Foundation to produce Alaska Native Word of the Day. I'm sorry, Alaska Native Word of the Week. So by the end of the week, we'll all understand more Indigenous words that are across the Doyon region. As I mentioned, we are one of two locally operated newsrooms, KUAC and our newspaper, the Fairbanks Daily News Miner, and we also do provide live broadcasts of the Borough Assembly and the school board meetings. One of the things that I'm super excited about is the collaboration that we've been having with the News Miner, because we're both stepping up to try to fill that gap that was created by KTVF's newsroom going dark. Additionally, we're collaborating with the Rasmussen Library here at the university to gather all of our archives together, get them digitized and submitted to the Library of Congress. So we've been accepted into the Library of Congress's Public Broadcasting Archives program, and we're in the middle of that project. We've already sent one of our shipments off, and we're getting ready to categorize and itemize all of our other archives so that we can get those to the digitizer. We're also very excited to report the expanded partnership with Alaska Public Media through Alaska Desk. We also were able to receive one of the Alaska Desk reporters, Shelby Herbert. So you've been hearing a bunch of her stories. And that was made possible by Alaska Public Media applying for funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting for this regional news desk project program that's happening across the state. We also partnered with Alaska Public Media to provide a free camp for kids, a 2-day camp earlier this month, and that was very well received. Kids had a lot of fun. And then, of course, if you were listening just about an hour and a half ago, you were hearing, maybe 2 hours ago, you were hearing all about the wildfires that are going on in Alaska on Talk of Alaska. So Lori Townsend had local experts, fire experts, and responders on the air answering questions about all of the wildfires going on. Additionally, so speaking of fires, emergency communication. So emergency alerts, not only via EAS that takes over our airwaves and pushes out that information so that everybody knows what's happening and what's if they need to go, but also non-emergency alerts. So those are all those updates that we're providing that our broadcasters and our announcers in the studio are letting folks know all about the evacuations and where they are, what level evacuations there are. And as of last count, there are 5 level 3 go evacuations surrounding the Fairbanks and interior area, and then many more fires that are being watched that are still 0 contained. And this is, I just learned that we are actually the only FM station conveying evacuation information in our area, in our service area. So with regard to the funding landscape, so CPB makes up 31% of our total budget. And obviously it is as you can see by the chart, it's the second largest segment after our donor contributions. So we're very fortunate that we live in an area where Alaska is just very generous. However, that generosity has a limit because of the number of people that we have in our areas. So there's no way to replace funding through CPB funding through other channels. And I think that we've done a pretty good job at explaining that. Tom was very passionate about that, and Ed as well. Cutting CPB funding would mean fewer educational resources, no reliable public safety messaging and announcements, fewer emergency alerts, and the loss of one of the last media platforms dedicated to local Alaskan life. We've heard a lot in our meetings with the congressional delegation that, well, people can just get that information from, online sources. Well, I think we all know in Alaska that internet and cell service is pretty inconsistent in Alaska, not just in rural areas, but also in urban areas. Unfortunately, for-profit stations can't really be relied on for non-emergency or non-EAS emergency information. So KUAC right now is the most reliable source of up-to-date information in many communities. Loss of funding could result in loss of programming, especially the PBS Kids programming. And PBS Kids provides programming for kids to get ready for school, and also all of the program that people have come to love and depend on for their lifelong learning, the science shows and the history shows. And additionally, the loss of funding will result in the erosion of community and statewide connections. So I mentioned our local programming that uniquely showcases our voices throughout the community, and then also that partnership. You still have to have resources in order to be able to have a partnership. So it would harm us all disproportionately. And that is the end of my slideshow. So I will stop sharing. And just mention, let me make sure. So we've got fires, I've got that. I've got all of it. Federal funding is irreplaceable. So I am done. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Gretchen. Next up, we have Jessica Tonseth with KSKO in McGrath.
Hi, I am Jessica Tonseth and I work for KSKO in McGrath. I actually work for them remotely, so I'm located in Anchorage. I do all of their find all of their money. All the fundraising is coordinated through me, so I'm kind of their I'm trying to bridge the gap that we already have without CPB funding. CPB funding is about 75% of our yearly budget. There's zero way that we could recoup that through community fundraising, or there's just nothing that we would be able to do to save our station without CPB funding. Our membership is up in the last 5 years since I started working for KSKO. I worked for them very briefly when I was in high school and a young teenager because I'm originally from McGrath. So when I got rehired in 2020, I was able to bring back some of the programs that I had worked on in the early 2000s that had fallen away. We also are in this weird spot in our station where this physical station that we were housed in fell apart last year after some local flooding. And so we are 90% done with moving our station into another building within the community. And we fundraised for years to do that and saved any money that we could to make sure that we would have a location for a physical station, knowing that our building was almost 80 years old when we moved out of it. So we have spent everything that we had been saving for this new building. So now our savings account is dwindled and now we're potentially not going to receive any more funding. So we have myself as an employee, and then we have one on-site program director as an employee, and both of us would be cut without CPB funding. However, we actually are paid through fundraising, and CPB funding actually goes to keeping our internet on and keeping the lights on and paying for insurance and everything else that we need. So we, even without employees and going to 100% automation, I still don't think that we would sustain through another fiscal year. We focus on trying to cover as much as we can through our programming, as far as you know, being a consistent source of news, emergency information, cultural programming, educational information. We do PSAs in multiple native dialects when we can. We have programming through a high school student, Colton Price. He has his own show through our program or on our station. You know, we have World Cafe, Native America Calling, The Car Doctor. We cover this huge scope of programming in an area that is about the size of an Ohio in the interior. So we have like 2,500 people that listen to us. We're all over the Kuskokwim and Yukon rivers. We're repeated in Fairbanks. And I want to say I recently heard we might be repeated in Bethel, or at least people in Bethel can get us on their radio through potentially a repeater upriver from them. So we don't have a way to up our fundraising to match the loss of CPB. We would just finish out whatever funds we have and then shut everything off, which is really unfortunate because 2 years ago we upgraded all of our equipment to be better so that we would be in the 21st century with our equipment. So I feel like this loss of funding just hurts the most underserved communities in our state. And I'm hopeful that it will not happen, but I know that we have a lot of advocacy work to do. That's it.
Jessica, thank you so much.
Next up, we have Molly Kabler from Coast Alaska.
Thanks so much to everyone who's here, and kudos to all the participants to date or so far in this call. It's so great to see all of you from across the state and the few more that are to come. I'm the executive director of Coast Alaska. Coast Alaska is an organization that began in 1997. Actually, it began in the mid-90s with a funding crisis where we came together as stations and decided that local news and local voices in communities were a priority. And so at that time, we incorporated an organization called Coast Alaska. Coast Alaska, you heard Lauren say she's a member, consists of 6 stations: KCAW in Sitka, KFSK in Petersburg, KSTK in Wrangell, KRBD in Ketchikan, KUCB in Unalaska, and KTOO Music and Arts. So we have been a collaborative since 1997 when Coast Alaska was incorporated. I personally started in public media in 1983 as a volunteer, and I've served a lot of the roles. I am in my 20th year as the executive director of Coast Alaska, but I've also been a volunteer, a staff member, a board member, and a couple of stints on the Alaska Public Broadcasting Commission. I currently serve also on the Distribution and Integration Committee for the Board of Directors for NPR, and done a lot of policy committee work with CPB. And I'm really proud of the managers and the stations across the state that provide incredible service to Alaskans and their spirit of fundraising and localism that make the service that we all share collaboratively so incredibly critical to Alaskans. It can be a little difficult to understand Coastal Alaska. We're not only the consortium of those 6 stations, but we're also a service bureau. And in one way or another, Coastal Alaska serves every station in the state. Of late, the most important service we probably provide is our advocacy work in state and federal representation. And along with several others, Gretchen, Ed, Tom, Kristen, and Jacqueline made many trips to Washington, D.C. and worked very closely with our representatives there. If you were listening to the hearing last week in the Appropriations Committee, you may have heard Senator Murkowski enter into the record a document from many station managers that was compiled from many station managers across the state about the loss of what the loss of CPB funding will mean. And right now, in terms of process, that rescission bill, which has not stayed in the spotlight during the appropriations bill that was passed this morning, Alaska time. So the rescission bill is still on the horizon. It is the bill that represents a cut of $1.1 billion to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting in funds that were already appropriated for fiscal year 26 and 27. Try not to bore you with too many of the insider details, but the Corporation for Public Broadcasting funding is appropriated 2 years in advance. So these were funds that we expect to start receiving in October this year for federal fiscal year 26. That process happened years ago already, and unfortunately, the rescission plan is to reach in and remove that funding. If that happens, it means about $20 million to Alaska stations in FY26 and FY27. That would be the amount of money that we will need to find to support the stations at the same level that CPB funds all of the Alaska stations. And that is a big lift. You've heard from several managers talking about the percentage of funding that they receive from CPB that run their operations, and that the loss of CPB funding means they are completely unsustainable. So it's about $20 million per year for fiscal year 26 and 27 that is at stake here. The rescission bill is currently held in committee, the Appropriations Committee. Representative Susan Collins is the chair, and the expectation, and of course we don't know entirely what's going to happen, but the expectation is that this will move forward from committee probably next week and potentially be voted on by the full Senate. If the full Senate votes to approve the rescission bill that was passed at the House level in a 2014 to 2012 vote, it means that the rescission will have been successful. This is a legal process, a legal process. There is nothing illegal about this process, so there will not be a remedy with the courts. So if the Senate approves the bill with no change, the rescission happens. There's a few other things that could happen. The Senate Appropriations Committee could revise the bill or vote down the bill, or the full Senate could vote down the bill. If they vote it down, then it's over. If they vote it up without change, it happens. And if they vote it up with change, it goes back to the House for a conference committee look. So I know quite a few people have been confused because of the appropriations bill that's been the spotlight in the news right now, but the rescission bill is still there and potentially still coming forward. A couple of people have mentioned Alliance for Rural Public Media, or the Protect My Public Media, but another resource is an organization called the Alliance for Rural Public Media. It was generally designed to highlight services in rural United States. You can find it at ruralpublic.org, and it's really highlighting the stories of rural public media for you to know not only what's going on potentially in Alaska, but across the United States. We know that rural public media service is so critical in many communities where there are not other news voices and local voices representing what's happening in those communities. Just in the interest of time, I will be happy to answer any questions about the funding process when we get to the end and the question and answer period. I'd like to reiterate what all of my colleagues have said here, is that in Alaska, it's very unlikely for many of us to fundraise our way out of a CPB cut. This is just a devastating potential for our stations. I will say, I know Alaskan broadcasters are incredibly scrappy, resilient, and I've been in this system for many, many years. And while I can't fault those who say they're going to close down or be significantly different, I haven't given up. And I think philanthropy is an opportunity for us to hopefully maintain service with an eye toward rebuilding eventually, when we collectively as a nation come to our senses and potentially recognize how important to democracy public media is. So I'll stop there, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Molly. It looks like we've got Justin.
Thank you, Gretchen. I'm Justin Showman, General Manager, President and General Manager at KTOO. I'm joined by Cheryl Snyder, who is our Vice President. Since the presentation is relatively short, I will tackle that, but Cheryl is available to help field questions when we get to that, point. So I'm going to share my screen. I do have a couple slides. All right, hopefully you can see that now. So again, KTOO, we're based in Juneau, Alaska. We're a community licensee. We were born in 1974, and then our TV station launched in 1977, I believe. It was then KTOO TV, later became 360 North, now known as KTOO 360 TV. These are the four principal services we offer. 360 TV, reaching the entire state. KTOO News is our flagship locally. That's 104.3, and also on KAUK, which is a repeater that reaches the Mendenhall Valley here in Juneau and at least partially out the road. That's a KTOO repeater. And then we also operate KXLL and KRNN. Those are our two music channels. And we have translators in Hoonah, Gustavus, and Icy Strait. You've heard a lot, no doubt, already about our role in emergency preparedness and emergency alerts. I am choosing to focus on two things that are uniquely Juneau, one to our community, and then one that's specific to our organization and a statewide service. Focusing first on public safety, we are the local primary station for all emergency alerts. So any alert that is transmitted from the Weather Service or other authorities that comes to KTOO first, goes to any of our partners in town from here. So we are that first line in delivering emergency information. What I think is equally as important, if not more so, or certainly equally, and I think sometimes gets lost in this conversation, is the importance of the fact that we are a local broadcaster. Up until last week, we were Juneau's only locally owned and operated news organization. And now we have a new entrant, the Juneau Independent, which just launched a week ago, which is changing the landscape here a little bit. But nevertheless, we have a team that lives and works among the same community that they are serving. They're they're facing and addressing the same issues. And we, of course, now have one that has become somewhat consistent in its timing, and that's the glacial outburst flood that has happened August 4th, 2 years in a row. So we're waiting to see what's going to happen this year. But, as we talk about public safety and emergency preparedness, part of what this particular event has really allowed us to do, being in the community, is really step up our work in this regard. And as we approach August of 2025, through our role on the local emergency planning committee, where we hold the media seat here in Juneau, we've been able to make a lot of really key introductions, and we're working on a couple projects moving forward. The first is an audio project, which should see release later this month, actually, now that it's July. And that's sort of detailing some of the causes and science behind this unique event that is the glacial outburst flood. But beyond that, we've been able to meet with a bunch of folks at LAPC to really coordinate our coverage. We'll be live on air. We've developed a plan this year that will dictate how often we're breaking into coverage based on water level in the river. We've spent time studying the maps. We know even with the new HESCO barriers, at what point we may have a breach, and other things that we're working on through our video production team is getting a couple webcams set up near the river, because another public safety hazard this tends to present is people congregating to actually see the flooding while first responders are trying to do their work. So in an effort to mitigate some of that, one of the things that we're working on currently is finding some places along the river to ideally, and I can't say we've got this nailed down yet because we don't, but we've got a number of contacts out. So we're hoping to set up a few cameras in our efforts to provide that community response. And then, because this event so uniquely affects one area of our community, we're also holding a community barbecue next week in the Valley to speak with Valley residents and talk about ways in which we can improve coverage and what the community is looking for. So when we talk about public safety, it's just important to me that we emphasize how much bigger it is than just the emergency alerts. And the emergency alerts are huge in and of themselves. But then there's all this additional context, all of this reporting, all of these things that we can do because we're living it, we're breathing it, and we're here amongst all of our neighbors having the same experience, and getting out there and trying to relay the information to keep people safe, keep people secure in our community. The other thing I'll speak just briefly about, I'm assuming most people on this call are familiar with Galvo, Alaska. This is, I would say, the flagship program of 360 TV. It's our state government coverage, predominantly the legislature, but we also cover Alaska Supreme Court. And when the executive has events in Juneau, we also take those statewide. In total, last year, it was 920 hours of live coverage of state government proceedings. So you can just imagine the amount of people power it takes to put 920 hours of live coverage out. And that's part of what is jeopardized through the loss of federal funding. This next slide is just a quick look at what our expenses look like. News and public affairs, of course, being the primary, and Galvo, Alaska trailing just shortly behind it at about 30% of our annual expenses. And then juxtaposing that with revenue, you can see just how big that CPB, Corporation for Public Broadcasting and federal funding piece, is for KTOO. It's 34% of our operating budget. That translates to $1.2 million. For context, you see our individual giving at 18%. That's about $600,000. It's about half of what we make. And of course, the bulk of our fundraising is happening here in Juneau. So like many of my peers have said on this call, our ability to make that up sustainably year over year over year, that loss of 200% more than we currently raise, is not necessarily realistic. I also share Molly's hope that there's opportunity for philanthropy to step up here, and I believe that they will. But ultimately, your calls to your senators, your notes to our senators at this moment are really important as the rescission vote does still loom and is likely to come in the next week to 2 weeks. One final note. We receive $1.2 million in Corporation for Public Broadcasting, largely to support television operations. Television is expensive. It's definitely more expensive to operate than radio. But just to further point to the complexity of all this, on the surface, there's almost an easy argument to be made that, well, TV is expensive and we lose the bulk of our grant goes to TV, so we eliminate TV. First, there's a mission argument, what we provide to the state, and through our partnership with Alaska Public Media and with KUAC, We ensure that the legislature reaches all corners of this state. That includes the ARC system, so it's reaching all rural communities. So there's the obvious mission argument, and then there's also the piece that through our partnerships with a number of sponsors, the city and borough of Juneau, we receive about $700,000 a year in operating funds through a grant from the city and the rest through direct sponsorship to make Gavel happen on an annual basis. So it's a real house of cards for us in terms of where can we absorb a $1.2 million loss without it having a snowball effect and continuing to serve the state. So with that, I will stop, and I'm available for questions.
Justin, thank you so much. So we've come to the end of our presentations because I do not believe that Jared was able to join us. So if any of our attendees have any questions, you can raise your hand or you can type in the chat and we can answer those. But while we're waiting for folks to formulate questions, our final request to you, as was mentioned earlier, is reaching out to our senators. And calls are being prioritized over email. So if you can make that call, and there's exact language that you can use right there on the screen. Take public media funding clawbacks out of the rescissions package or oppose the package. And you can call, and the numbers are on the screen, and you can say exactly those things. If, however, you're a little shy and you don't want to make that call, you can go to Protect My Public Media, or you can even use the QR code. I think the QR code takes you to the KUAC website, straight to the Protect My Public Media, and it will all give you the same information for Senator Murkowski and Senator Sullivan. So that is our big ask for you. And just to continually underscore the point that federal funding really is irreplaceable. There's no other source of funding that can fully replace a loss of CPB funding for any of the stations across Alaska. And you've heard the amazing work that many of our colleagues are helping to lead across the state, and how that affects our ability to provide services to our own communities is through that collaborative effort. So I thank you, and I'm really appreciative of all of the general managers who joined us and letting us know about the incredible work of your stations, and also how to make an argument with fully funding CPB with our senators. Jacqueline, you have your hand raised.
Yes, yeah, I have a question about the Senate bill that was passed for today. And what is the difference between what was passed today and the rescission bill? Are they two different votes?
Yes, they are. And Molly can explain that really well.
Yeah, if you can, please.
Sure. This is a good question. So the appropriations bill is work toward the fiscal year 26 budget. And the rescission bill is a completely separate bill. So the one we're most concerned about at this point is the rescission bill. It was known as HR 4 when it was in the House. And it was a bill sent by the White House to eliminate funds that were already appropriated. The rescission process means to go in and take money back that was already through the complete legislative process at the federal level. So that overall rescission bill is, I think, $9.4 billion, but it's $1.1 billion in public media funding for CPB for all of the stations across the nation. and for the other things that CPB supports. And again, for Alaska, it's about $20,000, excuse me, $20 million in each fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27. So what this means that for Alaska stations is that we normally would expect to start receiving the Corporation for Public Broadcasting money in our CSG. CSG stands for the Community Service Grant Program, and it's our main funding that we get from CPB at stations in Alaska. We would start receiving that in October. If the rescission bill passes, there is no funding available to us from CPB for 26 and 27, the federal fiscal years. So it's a very separate bill. And the news around this, what they're calling the big beautiful bill, I'm sorry, I want to call it the appropriations bill, they're two separate pieces of legislation. So ideally what you're calling to talk to Senator Sullivan and Senator Murkowski is the rescission bill. It's currently in committee at the appropriations level committee, and Senator Murkowski is on that committee. So we're really hopeful that she will have an impact. She spoke at the hearing that the appropriations committee had last week. So it's the rescission bill and Senate action. That's what you're calling to oppose passage of.
And do you know when that's going to be taken up? So it has to come out of the Appropriations Committee and then go to the Senate and then go to the House and then on to the President? Is that the process?
Not quite, but close. So if they pass the rescission bill without change at the Senate level, it's basically done. The White House introduced the legislation, so perhaps it requires a signature. That would be perfunctory. It's done. The scheduling of it, we're not entirely sure because Senator Collins, who is head of the Appropriations Committee, has not scheduled it yet, but likely the first day back from the 4th of July recess will be Monday, July 7th. That's the first day that they'll probably start looking at it. Could be a vote as early as July 8th on this, but there could be further process. If the committee takes it up and makes changes, the process will extend. And if they make changes, it will have to go back to the House before finalizing. So it's a little unclear exactly when they'll vote. The earliest would be Monday, July 7th.
Is this the one that needs to be passed by like July 18th or it that ends, right? If
Correct.
if they don't
great
pass
question. Yeah, so it's a rescission bill. If the Appropriations Committee didn't take it up, and if the Senate didn't take it up, and we get to July 18th, the rescission bill basically dies. It's over. So the options are Senate through committee process, vote for the bill as it's currently formulated. That means rescission happens. 2, Senate has some process, changes it. That means it goes back to the House, more process. 3, Senate appropriations or full Senate don't take it up by July 18th, and then it ends and goes away, and our money is not clawed back.
Okay, that's very helpful. And just one final question. Do you think our CPB contracts that go into FY27, will CPB ask for those monies back? Or
Jacqueline,
those funds back from us? Like,
Jacqueline, let me jump in on that because
okay.
CPB, unless it's a reimbursable grant from another government agency like the NGWS grant, like Ready to Learn work, they do not give that money away through grant contracts if they don't have the funds. So we asked that specifically of Kathy Merritt and Joy Lynn around the Regional Journalism what they couldn't tell us specifically was whether there was, if there was another executive order and they want to try to claw back that money or some other thing. But technically, that money was previously appropriated and actually given to CPB. It's in CPB's accounts. So, CPB, from my experience, has been really specific about ensuring if they give you a contract and it's not a reimbursable contract coming from another agency, they have those monies and they're going to follow through on that contract.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, I'll
that's
just
good.
add in that exactly that. If it's a contract, that's one thing. If it's your CSG, your community service grant that you get year by year, that's really the topic of the rescission bill. That's
Exactly.
what they're hoping to claw back. And for next generation warning system grants, for people who are curious, that's a double jeopardy because the funds were appropriated to FEMA and it requires reimbursement both by FEMA and CPB, hence why most of us who have those grants are on a stop work order for next generation warning system. But some of the other grants for specific projects, Jacqueline, that you have, and also like the news desk, quite a number of people talked about the news desk. Those are not subject to rescission, would be my best information.
That's my understanding, Wally.
Okay. Yeah, that's very helpful.
Spencer, you have your hand up.
I sure do. So I'm going to remind our attendees as we're at the tail end here for Q&A that you can put questions in the chat or in the Q&A tab. Or if you're having issues with either of those, you can raise your hand and we'll get that question from you. That being said, just to kind of spur a little more discussion, do you, and this is just kind of addressed to everybody, see the funding landscape changing on the state side? Probably not under this administration, but under a future one. Is that something that we're hoping for? Is that something that could offset some of the damage if this rescission goes through? Or is it something that we're just not really considering at this point?
Molly.
That's a great question. I think you're correct that you put in parentheses in your question, not during this administration, because I don't think we will see anything different from the current governor who has vetoed funding that's been through the legislative process for all of his years in his administration. We are hopeful that in a subsequent administration with a new governor that there could be funds coming through the Alaska Public Broadcasting Commission. It still exists. It has members. And for not this year we did not get funding in the state legislature. The choices were too hard and the Senate side in conference committee took it out. Although initially there was $1 million in the legislative process in Juneau for public radio, which was really great news. And the 5 previous years, we did have funding all the way through to the budget that was passed by the legislators and then vetoed by our current governor. So a new governor that believes that public media in Alaska is worthy of state funds could really turn that around. And if we could get a couple of $1 million in the state budget for stations, it would go a long way to mitigating the loss of the funds that might be removed in a rescission.
Excellent, thank you. We have a question from Leon Hatch, one of our supporters here in Fairbanks. Is there anything we can do to create more pressure and awareness, re the advanced warning grants?
I'll jump in on this. There's one thing that all of you can do that are on the call listening in is connect with your circle of friends and colleagues and family and have them make personal phone calls too. It can happen really quickly. They're counting the calls. I think what both offices want to hear more of is how will you and your community be impacted should you lose access to public television and public radio? And however you express that, make it unique. You don't necessarily need our talking points. You just need to leave them with this is how me and my family or my community will be affected if I lose my radio station. And if it's along a public safety lines or a civic service line, you heard Justin talk about how vital gavel coverage is. We've heard about the inclement weather and other natural disasters that occur across our state. Lauren did a marvelous job talking about the tsunami warnings. We've had a major earthquake that Jacqueline and I had to partner on when KMBA was their building was so damaged that they had to move in with us here at our building for a good 6 to 9 months, which we gladly did. But what a disruption to them and all of their incredible national work they do on behalf of all of us here in Alaska. So, but those personal stories really matter. And I know that the folks in Sullivan's office are keeping track of those. And so is Murkowski. But the bottom line is that Lisa's on board with us. She just needs more help.
Thank you. Kyle here asked, when does Congress take up future CPP funding for FY 28 and 29? Does anyone know that one offhand?
Another great question.
Molly.
Yeah, go ahead, Molly. You're so good at this.
Yeah. So our funding comes through the Health and Human Services. So they'll be starting up the budget process and what they call markup at the committee level to see if we can get funding in at CPB. The president's budget, of course, did not have any funds for CPB. That's not unusual. The first round of the Trump administration, CPB was never in the budget, and we successfully had federal representatives and senators mark up budgets to include it and get it through the process. So we're waiting for that to start happening in the next budget process. And it could be probably soon when they get through the bill they passed this morning and rescission and so later this summer into the fall.
So just remember that if rescission doesn't pass and we keep those funds, we're still going to be coming back to you and all of our listeners and viewers and talking about the various nuances of federal funding, because there's some other things that could occur that we didn't go into today. But trust me when I tell you, this is an incredible team of people that are very dedicated to ensuring that you're informed about how you can ensure that your public radio and public television service is protected. And I won't steal Gretchen's closing thunder since she organized us today. But, just reach out to us. Reach out to us, any one of us. Whoever is your service, reach out to us. We will help you connect with our congressional delegation.
Thanks so much, Ed. Spencer, do we have any other questions?
I do not see any other outstanding questions at this time.
Well, I have to thank everybody who stayed on the call. We went a little longer than we anticipated, but I think we had a really good brief from all of the stations participating, as well as yet another civics lesson. So thank you for wading through that. I also want to thank my colleagues from across the state, Jacqueline Salee, Kyle Clayton, Tom Abbott, Ed Ullman, Lauren Adams, Kristen Hall, Jessica Tonseth, Molly Kapler, Justin Showman, and Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl Snyder, for being there in case we had a specific question for you guys down there in Southeast. I will make sure that the slate that you're seeing on your screen right now is available to all of your stations, so that you have that you can use however you'd like. And just as a reminder to our participants, if you go to protectmypublicmedia.org, you can find how to contact Alaska senators, or you can take a screenshot right now with the senators' telephone numbers and start making your calls. And a final reminder, as Molly said, it's very likely that the Senate will take this up, the subcommittee will take this up the very first day after the 4th of July recess. So there's kind of a full court press that we're asking our supporters to do starting on the 7th, and we have until the 18th. So and as Ed said, make sure that your networks know, give them the information, give them a few talking points, and get the message to our senators so that they can count those. They need to hear from all of us. So thank you again for taking so much of your time today to visit with us, and we will endeavor to keep you as informed as we can. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.